Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Agatha All Along, Season 1, Episode 4. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we're picking up in the aftermath of last episode. Sharon is still dead. Now, some people have kind of wondered whether or not that's going to stick. We'll ultimately have to wait to see. But Agatha is the one that's kind of like, let's kind of move on. Oh, R.I.P. Mrs. Hart. Still not getting her name right, but whatever. To be fair, they were still calling her Mrs. Hart last episode, but they corrected themselves and calling her Sharon and stuff. So, either way, she's just kind of like, let's vamos. It's cool. I kind of made the wrong play, made her a draft pick. Shouldn't have done that. And just kind of wants to move on. I thought it was interesting, that line where she was like, didn't think you had it in you. And then Teen was like, who didn't have what in him? And she just looks at him and winks. I'm like, what is that about? I don't know what that means. Because she was saying that while she was over Mrs. Hart's body. Now, part of me wonders, could that be in reference to herself? Because she was like, I didn't think you had it in you. Like, I didn't think you actually care enough. That maybe for her, she's putting up this front, but maybe even she's feeling bad about Sharon. I don't know if that's what that's supposed to mean. And just like I said, the wink to like the teen and stuff, and he's like, okay, as he's digging Miss Hart's grave. Well, I'm sorry, I'm doing it now too. Sharon's grave. And so there's a conversation between Jen and Lilia about Alice, because they're like, right, everyone's quiet, and Lilia's like, yeah, because Alice is like, Sharon dying probably makes it feel even more likely that her mom most likely died on the road. But then Alice says, like, well, that her mom's still out here somewhere. And it's like, no, my mom's not. My mom died. She died on tour. And it's like, wait, if she died on tour, why are you on the road? Because she's like, my mom told me that it would save me. And you're like, interesting. And it's like, from what? And it's like, well, we know that there's a family curse. And Teen knows about that to some extent. But like, the others don't know about it. So they are down one witch. And I love that it turns into a blame game of, well, Sharon did drink double the poison, so the amount of the remedy that Jen prepared wasn't enough. Because that's only, like, based on how much everyone drunk. Sharon, you do think about it. It is a detail you do forget. Sharon is the only one. Well, other people probably didn't forget, but I did forget. Because I was thinking like, oh, they got it to her too late because it was literally the last second. But it's also like that timer was accounting for everyone having a single glass of wine. Sharon had double. So she was already doomed because she had double the poison running through her veins. So she was dying faster than... She was probably already dead even before they gave her the medicine. Like, I mean, even before the timer reached, like, 0, like, she probably died way quicker because she had double. So she probably had half, like, whereas everyone had 30 minutes, she probably had 15 because of that. So she's been dead for, like, while they were figuring stuff out still. So that's how... For all we know, like, pretty soon after she passed out is when she died. So she probably could have died in that moment, maybe. But either way. But it's a blame game because it's like, well, Jen didn't prepare the proper medicine. Oh, Alice wasn't the protection witch that I didn't see you do any protecting, and it kind of becomes a pointing fingers thing. But Teen points out, we all failed. Like, we were all supposed to look after each other, but we didn't. So her death is kind of on all of us, and we can't make that mistake again. The road is deadly. But it's like, yeah, we need a green witch because we have because Agatha's trying to say, like, right, we only needed a whole bunch of witches for getting onto the road. We don't need, witches to survive the road. And I love that they're debating lyrics, which I love that she's like, oh, Coven too. And it's like, no, what I forgot what Jen was saying, but basically it's like the Coven has to come together. But she's like, no, Coven of two, and they're debating the lyrics, And it's like, well, how many people left the road when you finished previously? And Agatha holds up one finger. So I don't know if that's meaning like, oh, I'm the only witch who came out the road. Because like, I figured there would have been a follow-up question of, because I don't know. She did say like, Alice did broach it as, how many other witches like left the road with you? And she said one, which feeds the narrative of, oh, a coven of two. But the theory that I kind of had and other people starting to have is like, Agatha's got to be gaslighting them. She's never actually been down the road, has she? But it's like you never know, like, because she's so sly and slippery that you're like, it's hard to say what she's telling the truth about, what she's lying about. I guess the thing is to immediately assume everything Agatha's telling you is a lie to some extent. But it's like, that's why I'm like, that's so ambiguous, that one finger where you're like, almost makes you wonder if that was supposed to be like a wink and nod to Doctor Strange, or almost like that one. I don't know, a single index finger up. You can't help but think otherwise, but I don't know if that was meant to be like some wink and nod to that to some extent. But I'm curious, like, what that one finger could have meant. Could it have meant like, oh, I'm the only one that survived the previous road, or was it another witch that survived with me? So is that her telling the truth on either front, or is that her lying just to feed the narrative that she said of like, oh, the lyric is coven too? So either way, they have to summon a green witch. And it's like, okay, please be this. Please be decent looking. Please be powerful, and so on and so forth. And lo and behold, from Sharon's grave rises Rio. I thought it was interesting. They're like, oh, are you a green witch? She's like, well, I'm the green witch. And I'm like, what does that mean? Does that mean like all green witches sprout from you to some extent, or like, what, are you almost like the equivalency of like the witch version of Gaia, like who is like the goddess of like? I actually don't know what Gaia's circumstances are, because is she a Titan in like Greek mythology? She's not a god, is she? She's a Titan, isn't she? Or I might be basing that on God of War, because like God of War kind of, I mean, it does its own thing with some of the lore, but I'm like, that's why I'm like, I feel like sometimes Gaia is treated as a goddess. I don't know if she actually is, though, or if she's just a Titan. That's why I was like, is that what she mean by that? Where she's like, I'm the mother of green witches, like I'm kind of like the first, because she said the green witch, or it's just kind of like, yeah, everyone else pales in comparison to me, just like, I guess just like how Wanda is the Scarlet Witch, but I mean they're one like every 1,000 years or something like that. So I don't know. Obviously Agatha's not too keen on her being here, because it's like, cool, this is the person who, but her immediately wanted to attack Rio, which is so interesting, because it's like very different from their first interaction. Where, I mean, it's like, to be fair, it's like, I was hoping to get away from you, and here you are now on the road with me. I guess it's Agatha doesn't want there to be a potential of Rio getting any power or something like that. I love the whole conversation of, I don't know whether to hate her or get her number. It's like, yeah, I'll be probably as sexy as hell. So, but either way, because they don't know, like, it's like, oh, well, do we really know anything about this witch? It's like, well, Agatha hates her, so there's a that puts her in a pro column. But it's like, yeah, I love how like crazy Rio seems. It's like, oh my god, so this is a road. Like, oh, and she's kind of skipping down the road, like, ooh, like, it's like, oh, she's so unhinged. But nevertheless, they continue down the road, and there's a house in the distance. It's the second trial, and Alice is immediately like, nope. I was like, for her to react like that, she must have immediately recognized the house. But then she's kind of like, no, I'm not going in there. But it's like, yeah, there's no turning back, because now the road's like, no, you're going in here. You try to go backwards, the house appears in front of you. So they go inside. Was it the waxing, or is it waning? I forgot what it was. I think it might have been, was it the waxing or waning? I forgot which one it was now, because I'm mixing it up. But they were saying like it meant like fire or something, which obviously you're like, well, Alice did just say like her mom died in a hotel fire. Like, that's, and it's like, she even said later on, it's like, yeah, the trial isn't being subtle, which is so interesting too, just because it's like, well, there's a technique of Reens called the crescent flash, and it's like, well, all his techniques in 3 going forward deal with fire, so it's like, and the upgraded version of that is the waning crescent flash, so it's like interesting. That's why I was kind of confused of like, was it waxing or waning? I don't remember. But either way, just interesting connection of like, oh, so there's even deeper meaning behind using the name waning. But it's like, I guess I never thought about the moon positioning when using, because I mean, crescent does typically always get associated with the moon, so I never thought about that with Reens' technique. But either way, I'm going off my trails tangent of the week. But yeah, I love they go in there. It's like a very like 70s style that everyone's got going for them. I love the whole situation of immediately they go in there and, well, at first, Alice talks about Lorna saying like the reason why she died on tour is because she was trying to get to the Witch's Road. Her fans were her coven, so each show she was performing was her trying to open the Witch's Road. And then you have Lilia being crazy again. And I forgot what she had said. She had said something about to Alice, and she's like, "Oh, don't, Alice." And she's like, "Don't what?" She's like, "Don't what?" And it's like, Jesus, Lilia, what is your circumstances of like? It's like, well, you're the clairvoyant one, but it's hard to deal with your clairvoyance when you don't even recognize what's happening because you're kind of on autopilot with your clairvoyancy. So it's like, that's not that helpful. But yeah, then everyone else starts. It starts off with Lilia getting burned and burning up. Alice puts a protection spell around her, then one around. Eventually, has to put one around Jen, and it's kind of, which I love that Jen was the one that was immediately like, "Yo, put one around me," and then you end up being the next victim. But sadly, like they all have like burns on them, and it turns out that this is all based on Alice's curse. It followed her down the Witch's Road because she talks about it later on. She kind of because she was so angry at her mom for dying. When her mom died, she was just so angry she didn't want to believe anything. So she's like, "Mom was kind of crazy, not well." So she even said so last episode. So it's like, I'm not gonna listen to anything she says anymore. Like everything else was bullshit, you know. But it's like, yeah, now we find out what this was all about. Lorna wasn't trying to go down the Witch's Road for herself. And even the whole, like, last episode, I can't protect you. And that's what ate her up. That was kind of like, because that's all she focused on. It wasn't even about her. It was about protecting Alice. It's like, I can't protect you. I'm failing you. And it's like, every time she was trying to open the Witch's Road, because that's what her mom meant. She literally was trying to find a way to save Alice. And that's what this was all about. We actually still don't have we never got an answer to who actually cursed Alice's family and for what purpose. How long has that family curse been around? I mean, this is at least 3 generations that we're aware of. At minimum 3 generations, but probably a lot longer. But we'll probably never get an answer to who did that. Maybe there's a lot we'll discover on the road for a lot of these witches all around. But because there's some unanswered stuff, like Jen talks about it later on. Like she's like, I was a midwife and I showed up at this thing thinking I was going to be like they just wanted to, you know, learn from me and stuff, but it was a trap. And she's like, I don't know how that person did it. They didn't even have magic, yet somehow they were able to bind me. So I'm assuming it's that dude that was like drowning her last episode during the trial. I'm assuming it's that dude that bound her. So it's like, how did he manage to do that as a normal human? Part of me wonders, since the name has been dropped, has this been like some lone con by Mephisto? Like he's played a role in everything. Like, could he be behind Alice's family getting cursed? Could he be behind Jin getting bound? Like maybe he has something to do with Lilia as well. Maybe he has something to do. I definitely think he has something to do with Rio and Agatha, but we'll get to that in a second. Not love, but I felt bad when Teen got flung through the glass and then everyone's rushing over to him. I love that Jin's the only one that's like, is he okay? It's like, oh, look at you. You're going to stay in the circle the entire time? Because even Lilia ran out. I was like, oh, are you going to be okay? And it's like, I guess the curse needed to make its mark, but I mean, given enough time, it would have killed everyone too. But yeah, so now they have to perform the Witch's Road ballad, Lorna's version of it, to fight back. And I love that they put on a performance. It's like Tina's on guitar, Jen's on bass, and I love that throughout the entire thing, Lilia is constantly changing instruments. I also find it interesting, and maybe it's kind of poignant, that the one person that points out what Lorna might have been doing, it was Rio being like, yeah, she was trying to protect her daughter. And it's like, oh, that realization kind of kicked around for everyone. So they perform a different rendition of the Witch's Road. And I'm like, I love just how different it sounds too. So it's actually, and just like Catherine Hahn killing it, so is Allion. It's just like, it's so dope all around. But the demon that's part of the curse or whatever finally manifests itself. It's the red demon thing we saw in the trailer, or at least the teaser, like I said. But she finally sees it, and it's like, I can see it, meaning I can kill it. So she keeps performing. And I think it's so badass and metal looking when it's like the thing is perched on her shoulders, and I'm like, is that where the scar is from? Because it's like, it's from its talons of its feet. But it's like, yeah, it's on top of her burning, and she keeps going, and then finally, like, it hits the like crescendo and end, and the demon disappears. So finally ending the curse. Not only like, well, is it over? You know, this is all about each person confronting their fears, you know. And obviously the teens got a piece of glass stuck in him, so they go through the piano, which was the exit, and it's about getting him healed up. And you can see that look on Rio's face when you see how concerned Agatha is. It's like, no, he's good. Come on, you got to be okay. Because she was one of the first ones to rush over towards him when he got flung through the glass. And now that he's hurt, she's panicking. We've never seen her like this before. We picked up last episode, she's very protective of Teen because everyone's under the assumption of she thinks he's her son. So she's weird, like, you know, Jen luckily was able to heal him. And it's kind of this thing, I think, for the first time, Jen's able to use her witchiness for good. Like, she did it to save them last episode, but also kind of making up for, hey, I wasn't able to save Mrs. Hart, but I was able to save Teen. It's like, I'm able to do good rather than just like the bullshit I'm selling to my customers. I'm actually able to do witchcraft. I'm doing good stuff with my witchcraft. As Agatha told her last episode, it's like, yeah, I left you alone because you did good work. So, and the fact is, Agatha stays by, she stayed by the teen's side the entire time while he's recovering, like looking so concerned. But yeah, like I said, that conversation between the trio of Lilia, Jen, and Alice about, you know, once again, Jen's circumstances, Alice being so angry, and it's like, right, now you know the truth that your mom did everything she did to protect you, and Lilia's kind of like, it's okay to be sad, because she's like, sad is better than angry. She also points out, like, oh yeah, I have this scar on my neck, and it's like, what is that scar? Yeah, it's from a vampire. It's like, yeah, try to bite me. Which I'm sure a lot of people have a lot to say about that. It's like, yeah, second mention of vampires in the MCU. First time being season 1 of... They make a small reference to vampires in season 1 of Loki. And now we have this. And it's like, yeah, still no clarity on the Blade movie. I think there have been some recent updates. But I haven't heard too much, or, you know. So that's still kind of in production hell / limbo. So whatever, I'm sure that's just gonna make people go like, yeah, we ever gonna get that Blade movie or Midnight Sun movie or whatever we're potentially gonna get related to the more supernatural side of things. So it's like, yeah, they're in the MCU, so it's like, how do they just haven't cracked how they want to go about presenting Blade in the MCU, I guess. Whatever the case may be, this ain't a Blade conversation, even though it could be a Blade conversation. I did forget that, like, you know, I loved Agatha pulling her trick of, like, because Rio's like, hey, it's like, well, the universe is kind of funny how it is of, like, yeah, like, proximity, you needed a green witch, I was the one that it sent down here. She's like, or rather up. And so the whole situation of, like, Agatha putting Rio on blast of, like, oh yeah, like, you'll get the end, you'll get your power, and your coven will be dead, and I'll get their power. Agatha like, oh my god, that's my coven you're talking about. How dare you? How could you? I'm not the same person. I was like, look at you and your theatrics. But it's, like, interesting. Rio's like, I need their bodies. And you're like, for what? What is this about? Like, is this... Does she need more soldiers? Because I'm wondering, like, is she herself an agent of Mephisto? And is that what she needs? Like, does she have a quota of bodies she has to get or something like that? So, I don't know what to fully make of that. I would wonder if this had something to do with the Salem 7, but maybe not. Maybe it's kind of a different thing altogether. And I love Lilia being like, oh yeah, don't think I've forgotten about what you said back at that studio, so... But yeah, Agatha's looking after Teen, and it's kind of like we learn some more about the sigil. That it's like, did you put this on me? Agatha's like, no. But even if I did, I actually wouldn't know. The sigil not only keeps you hidden from other witches, it keeps who casted the spell from ever knowing too. And it's like, well, is there a way to lift it? She's like, there's a way you can break it, but you cannot lift it. Well, break might not have been the right word she used. I don't remember the exact word. I don't think it was break. I think it was something else. But essentially, it's like it will only stop existing once there's no longer a need for it to exist. So whatever reason she was I'm not her, but whatever reason that the Teen has been hidden, like once that becomes once it becomes a moot point, then it'll finally be removed. So, and then, Teen asked a question he shouldn't have asked. What happened to your son? And it's like, yeah, heal up quickly and go. Like, she was so concerned. They were having like a moment, and then it's just kind of like no, I don't want to talk about my feelings. I don't want to talk about my past. You shouldn't have brought that subject up. Let's go. But the sharing of scars, she's like, was it the Daughters of Liberty? And it's like, it came at me with like a certain needle, and it's like, oh, who are the Daughters of Liberty? Exactly. So she kind of wiped them out. But then Rio talks about her scar being an actual person. She's like, there was someone that she cared about, and she had to do a job, something she wasn't happy about, and she hurt that person, and that person became her scar. Which then, that's why I'm like, is Rio an agent of Mephisto? Like, once again, there was the theory of maybe Agatha didn't willingly give up her child for the Book of the Damned, the Darkhold. It's like, no, she was either tricked into it, which Mephisto could have tricked her just directly by lying to her. Not, there's always a price to pay for something, and you just never know the price. Or her and Rio got super close, but it's like, oh, it was for the purposes of tricking you into this. Why Agatha in particular, who knows? But that's why their circumstances, I guess, are what they are. Like the whole Blackheart situation of like, I guess it's like, you hurt me, I hurt you. And it just seems like that's probably like their back and forth. Because it just seemed like whatever happened between them initially, you're like, okay, whatever, Agatha did something to Rio. You don't think it'd be one-sided, but it might have been a tit-for-tat thing of, you did something for me and it hurt me, and then I broke your heart and hurt you as retribution. Maybe I didn't do it consciously. Maybe it was like a subconscious thing, but still. Either way, Rio follows after Agatha, and they have a moment where it's like, okay, so there was a love history here. It wasn't just like some platonic thing. It was romantic in the regards of like, okay, they were even about to kiss and everything. I was like, hey, yo, oh, we about to. And then she stops and she's like, Agatha, that boy is not yours. And you're like, okay, they set that up last episode, and now she's giving a definitive answer. Once again, we're going back to the running theory that people have. Just the question is, how does this whole circumstance work, and why? Who put the sigil on them? Like, if he is who people think he is, could Agatha have been the one that did it? But why would she have done it? And it's like, well, would Wanda have done it? But why would Wanda have done it? Could Mephisto have? There's so much there. Once again, it could have been Rio, and then she just doesn't remember. But for her to definitively say, like, and that kind of adds validity to my thing of, I think Rio's the one that tricked her into giving up her son, or either she took Agatha's son, not realizing, like, and it could have easily been a thing of, like, even Rio didn't know the child she was taking was Agatha's and fell in love with her type of thing. Or she maybe did and was just putting it off for so long, but Mephisto was like, yo, you got to do this. It's your job. I don't know. There's something definitely there. So I'm curious to see where all this ends up taking us. How Agatha proceeds going forward now with Rio in particular, because it seems like it means a lot more coming from Rio being like, oh, well, for one, Rio's able to see through this and say, oh, you think he's your son. He's not. No one else is registering that, but I am clearly telling you, that's not your kid. So we'll see what her relationship with Teen is like going forward. But she still might think he's something worth keeping around, even if but maybe it's also like she's deluding herself into still being like, oh, Rio's saying that just to hurt me. She doesn't know for sure. It's like, he might actually still be my son, so maybe she is extra protective of him going forward in that capacity. We'll ultimately have to wait to see. I'm like I said, excited to see where the next episode takes us with this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.